Hello and welcome to No Dice, No Problem, the best award adjacent, sometimes gaming podcast on the internet. My name is Daniel and I'm joined by my co host, Drew.
What up?
We're back with a special episode of the show. This is a short one. So I had the chance to finally play the Gundam card game. I drove 2 hours to London, Ontario to go to the store called the Mana Lounge to participate in one of the beta events that's kind of going on right now. And I wanted to share my thoughts with you, our audience. And Drew is with me today as kind of an audience surrogate, as somebody who hasn't played it but has played many TCGs. So I'm very excited to share my experience. Right out the get go, I'm very pleased with the game. I think it's a lot of fun.
Hell yeah, dude.
I think it's fun. I have never participated in an event that had such a premium product. Like the beta box is like it came in this like plastic slipcase.
Ooh, that looks nice.
It's got the Gundam beta on it, and then it's got the RX-78 Gundam in like a foil emboss on this hard. It's like this nice, durable cardboard box, and you get a ton with it. Like it came with 16 booster packs. You get one special foil rare. You get a card set, and it's got like tokens and sort of like staples. So like 56 cards. And then you get some rules and then actual plastic counters like dice to go with it.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun. And I certainly hope that this game catches on. But I do have some reservations. So I wanted to kind of talk about that. I know that you watched the sort of how to play video.
I did. So I'm kind of prepared.
That's all I had going into the event. I watched the video literally like as I was going to sleep. And then I was driving the 2 hours to get there, and I was like, okay, I think I know the rules.
Dude, when I was watching it, it was like watching, it's like they're trying to teach me while I'm in a club, because the music in that video is so goddamn loud, and it's just the two most like boring, drab, possibly AI generated voices. Like
certainly AI generated voices.
Yeah. Just yapping back and forth about it and doing the classic, like, oh, you can do this thing, this cool thing. And then the sort of player character, the player dude is like, oh, I can do this thing. It's like, yes,
I just told you could.
Said you could do that. Yeah. And then you go, oh, I can do this cool thing. Yes, sir, you can.
It's like, we got to stretch this video out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because so mine, like, right at the get-go, this game is a lot like Digimon and One Piece to me.
See, I agree. I've never played One Piece, but for me, it felt a little bit like it felt very much like Digimon, but with a sort of Hearthstone mana, where you get the one each turn.
Yes, and that's where it's kind of like One Piece, because in One Piece you get these Dawn cards. I believe you get two at a time with One Piece. But you kind of like you get a set number of resources each turn, which is just like Hearthstone, just like One Piece, just like, actually, I know you've been playing Pokemon TCG Pocket as well. So just like that. That's the kind of similarity that I found with One Piece. Digimon, though, there are like very, very big similarities. I mean, the most obvious one is sort of the system area, where you have your system cards, which are basically just like your security cards in the Digimon game. The only difference is that in the Digimon game, you don't have bases. You don't have like a base to protect your securities, just like you have a base to protect your systems in the Gundam game. So for some context for folks who don't play Digimon or haven't played the Gundam card game, in the Gundam card game, your objective is to basically kill your opponent's systems area. So in the game, after you draw your hand and you're satisfied with your hand, you take 6 cards from the top of your deck face down, and you lay them out kind of next to your play area. Those 6 cards represent your system. And when all of those are destroyed and you take one more hit, you lose. But protecting that system is another card that you have by default, and it's called an EX base. It's basically a base card is essentially like a shield, and they have a certain number of hit points. And this EX base has no effects other than it's got 3 HP. And it sits there protecting the rest of your systems. In Digimon, you don't have a base. You just have your
No.
what they call securities.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where all the similarities lie, because what's really neat is that whereas in Digimon, if you attack somebody's securities and it's like a Digimon, you actually fight.
Yeah, and you don't seem to do that in Gundam.
No, they're just treated like a flat out resource. You just
Yeah.
attack it, doesn't matter how much damage, it kills it, and it
It
doesn't pass through.
only it only does something when there's a burst effect.
Correct. And I think that's what is really neat about this game. So cards have a lot of different effects. Sometimes a card might have like multiple effects. It might have a burst effect, which means that if that card is in your system and it's destroyed and revealed, it has like an effect like put it to your hand or deploy it or something like that. It may also have a deploy effect where when you play it, it does something. Which is something that I found really cool about this. The idea that even though you don't have the complexity of fighting the securities like in Digimon, you have the nuance of having a base, having hopefully burst cards that are in your system, and then kind of rallying back and forth between protecting your system and trying to kill your opponent's system. I think it's really neat. Obviously, the other similarity with this game is the inheritable system that Digimon has. And I know you have a lot more experience with Digimon than I do.
So if we're inheritable like digivolving?
Yeah, kind of like digivolving.
Yeah. So in Digimon, certain Digimon can digivolve into other Digimon, right? It has an evolution mechanic to it called digivolution, right? And so when something digivolves, it usually carries with it an inherited trait, so that you grow this like stack of digivolving Digimon, and the various Digimon that you used in that stack to digivolve to the next tiers give essentially some sort of bonus. Maybe that bonus is extra attack power. Maybe that bonus is when you attack, discard a card and then automatically destroy an enemy Digimon, or various other effects. You also get the same thing in Gundam to some degree. It doesn't keep on going, but you can pair a pilot with a Gundam.
Yeah, and I think that's what was cool about it. You're right. You don't have layers, but you have pilot plus Gundam, and then the pilot can give sort of attack power and hit points to your Gundam to kind of boost them, in addition to other effects like on attack effects or on deploy effects. What's also really cool is that you have linked sort of like pilots. So each mobile suit, not just Gundams, right? Because in the world there's a lot of complexity on what is a Gundam. But in the game, each mobile suit has a sort of a link quality to it. So, for instance, if I pull out actually like any Gundam, like I actually have one like right in front of me here, and it's the Unicorn Gundam. So the Unicorn Gundam needs to be linked with a specific character named Boniger. If you link the Gundam or the mobile suit with the correct character, then you can actually attack with it the turn it's deployed.
Which is, I'm sure, very powerful.
Which is extremely powerful. So, like, for instance, like the Wing Gundam needs Hiro Yui, obviously the pilot from Gundam Wing. You can use other pilot characters to pilot this Gundam, but they effectively have summoning sickness. And obviously other pilots are not as good. So if you link, you get basically the ability to attack right away with it, which is extremely powerful in this game.
Yeah.
It's very cool. It also adds this extra layer of deck building, right? Because you have base cards that you also have to think about when synergizing. You have command cards, which are essentially like the equivalent of like sorceries and instances from Magic. You have your unit cards, which are like your mobile suits and your different kinds of robots. And then you have your pilot cards. So you have to think about synergies between the pilots that you have and the mobile suits, the more powerful ones. And then you also have to think about the effects that your different mobile suits have. And so I actually think that there's a fair amount of constructed depth to this game. That kind of excites me.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting too about the game was, so there is to every Gundam, every are they all just called Gundam, or are they
You
sometimes
can call
referred
them
to as
mobile suits. For
mobile
instance,
suits?
in Witch from Mercury, Gundams are like have a specific like connotation
Oh, I see.
within the world.
Well, whenever you have that type of card, there is a level and then a cost, which I thought was interesting.
Yes, yes. So each actually, it's not even just mobile suits. It's literally every card.
Is it every card? Okay.
It's every single card. So, for instance, I have a card here. It's just called Ball. It's like a ball droid,
Okay.
and it's got a level 1, and then it's got a cost of 1. So that means that you can only play this if you are level 1 or up, and the level actually is dictated by the number of resources you have, which is really interesting. And that kind of brings into the conversation one of the things I found most curious about this game. So a lot of people who were at the store, I guess, were like One Piece or Yu-Gi-Oh players or Digimon
Okay.
players, and they were like, "Oh my god! In this game, you get to draw if you go first, which you don't get to do in many TCGs. Um, in this game, you draw first if you go first, but your opponent, I guess, sorry, English is lost on me. If you are going second, you actually get a free resource.
Oh, okay.
Which is
Yeah.
really interesting. So you have your normal resources, and then if you go second, plus other card effects, you get what's called an EX resource. So an EX resource is like a temporary resource. If you use it to play something, it's effectively destroyed, and you can't use it again. But what's neat is that because your level is dictated by the number of resources you have, if you go second, you effectively start at level 2. So
Yeah.
then you're playing level 2 cards on your first turn, which is very, very cool. But if you burn your EX resource, you go down a level.
Which is really interesting. So I believe in Hearthstone, the second player gets a similar thing. They get an extra mana crystal
Yes.
or it's a coin, I believe, that they
Yeah,
can
and you can
use at
use it
some point.
once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But there's no such thing as like a level, right?
exactly.
So there could be something that's level 6 but only costs 4, but even though it's only costing 4, you still need 6 resources to even try to cast it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there are some cards that are extremely powerful. Like probably one card that was a menace at the beta event was the Zaku 2. It's a green unit.
Okay.
Um, but what's cool about it is that so it's a level 2 card. It costs 1, but it has an attack effect. And its attack effect is this unit gets AP +2 during this turn. So that means it gets +2 attack during this turn. And so if you go second and you have the Zaku, you could play it right away because you're level 2.
Yeah.
The Zaku by default has 1 attack and 2 HP. But at the start of the game, your first turn with the Zaku, you literally hit for 3.
Yeah.
And your opponent cannot attack you on the first turn. So that means that you get a free shot at their EX base, which has 3 health. So if you go second and you have a Zaku, and this happened to me so many times, like I guess so many times, it happened to me twice in both rounds that I lost. My opponent got a Zaku 2 out and immediately killed my EX base, which meant that on my second turn, I hopefully would have had a base to play to protect my systems.
Yeah.
If not, I'm just taking direct shots to my system.
So it's like a really, really powerful aggro card.
Very powerful aggro card that benefits from you going second because of the level advantage you have.
Yeah.
And like speaking of level advantage, this is something that led me to my only win of the event. I won
Nice.
1, lost 2. I got slapped real hard. I played against the guy and I held on to my EX resource until I was level 6
Okay.
because I didn't have any level 6 cards. So I had a 1 level advantage on my opponent the entire match, and I was constantly just playing better stuff and just locking him down. This sort of level system and the requirements that you have on your cards for a level and a resource, I think also make the game a little bit more complex, I guess, because on the surface it looks like a really simple game.
Yeah.
Especially
it's
since
not.
Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's not quite like Magic the Gathering has that complexity built mostly from being around for like 30 years and just continually
Yes.
adding shit to it, you know, in the same way that Yu-Gi-Oh can get really complicated because of just
Yeah.
well, Yu-Gi-Oh is really complicated for an entirely different reason. But you know, this game just came out, but it does seem pretty simple. But like, I mean, we'll have to see what comes out, I guess, when it comes to the full release and what's available.
Yeah, because
Um,
they haven't actually released all of the colors yet, because this
yeah.
beta only has 3 colors, white, blue, and green. And we know that at least the initial release in July is going to have a red color as well.
Okay.
I think the interesting thing that makes this different from like a game like Magic is that Magic is complex not only in its like sequencing and the stack, but also in the structure of your turn, right? Because you've got your untap, upkeep, your draw. Then you've got your pre-combat main phase, you've got your combat, you've got your post-combat main phase, and then you've got your end step. But
Yeah.
in this game, it's kind of like you've got your untap, upkeep, and draw, and then you just got a main phase and then end, and that's
I
it.
mean, as long as it's not Digimon with its breeding phase.
It doesn't have a breeding phase. It,
Oh God,
but I
I can't
think the
stand it.
open main phase is so interesting because it's like you could do things like, well, I'm going to play this thing, force you to rest, like tap
Sure.
some of your units. Then I'm going to play this pilot that's linked to this unit. I'm going to attack your base. Then I can play a whole bunch of other crap and then go and kill your units and then attack your systems, because you could like sequence things out in a really free form way, because even though there are no like instances, any card that has action labeled on it can be played on like in response to an opponent.
Sure.
So priority is kind of passed when you play something. And of course, there's also like if I attack somebody's system, I run the risk of them having a burst card in there. So you really have to think about the sequencing of your attacks, and you could space out your attacks on your turn based on what happens with like a system being destroyed or like a deploy effect that you have. It's very, very cool. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Magic the Gathering, for instance,
Hmm.
there's not a huge amount of like testing when it comes to combat. You're either kind of going for it or you're not, right? Because
Yes.
you have already deemed it as either being safe to go for it and do combat, or it's not safe, so therefore you're going to hold back. Whereas with Digimon or Gundam, you can test the waters a bit more by attacking a thing, seeing what happens, playing then more cards in response to it, and then just kind of seeing where it goes from there. You know, like you can do it way more on a play by play basis.
Yeah. And another cool thing about combat is that this game has sustained damage. So unlike Magic, when you have your combat and two creatures kind of clash and, one kills the other one, technically in that combat, the creature that was killed still technically does damage to the creature that was
Mm-hmm.
attacking. Um, but that damage kind of disappears in your end step, right?
Yep.
In this game, damage persists across your turn. So if your unit gets
Hmm.
damaged, you have to mark it. This thing has 2 damage on it. And so it has less HP as the game continues. Which I thought was really neat because I hadn't seen that on any other sort of TCG that I've played. So I had to think
Yeah,
like,
it's not very common.
it's not, but it kind of makes sense because it's got that war game feel. Because I know you and I have been playing a lot of Warhammer. It's like, oh,
Yeah, dude.
this unit has damage on it, which felt like a war game to me. I also happened to build a deck that was based on the repair mechanic. So one of the main Gundams has like it heals 2 every turn in your end step. So
Oh,
this thing is like
nice.
a fucking beast. It's like I could
Yeah.
use it to, instead of using it to attack like the system, I would use it to attack other units. It would deal damage to my unit, but then I would heal. And then I would use my weak units to attack the system because it only needs to deal 1 damage.
Yeah.
So it's really, you can be really strategic about what you're attacking with in this game, and like what your target is, and the order in which you're actually destroying things. Really, really like
So
it.
so how does deck building work? Because there are what, three, you said 3 colors so far?
There's 3 colors so far. You could put up to a maximum of 2 colors in a
Okay.
deck, I believe.
Because I was curious as to how it worked because in Magic the Gathering,
Hmm.
there is mana, similar to resources, but the mana is colored in various ways. There are 5 different colors of mana,
Yeah.
right, as well as uncolored mana, but that's whatever. Whereas resources, there's no color resources, they're all just resources. So I was curious as to if that changed anything. But if it's just a case of you can only include up to 2 colors in the deck, and that's just kind of it, that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's neat because the resources are kind of like they're color agnostic, right? They're just
Yeah,
everything is colorless because you're just it's like think of it as like electricity. You don't have different colors of electricity for your robots or whatnot.
sure,
But there are things that kind of make you build a certain way. Like for instance, each unit has a specific like tag on it. So like this perfect strike Gundam card, which is like dope art,
yeah,
has
man,
triple ship alliance on it. And so it's a space slash Earth. Um, but like the famous RX-78, this is like the legend like foil. I ended up getting 2 of them. Has both Earth Federation and white base team. Um, so you kind of have to build around like synergies rather than
sure.
colors. Let me see if I could find one that is that actually kind of like makes sense. I didn't really build around a particular. I made some mistakes when building. Actually, there was like I had some cards that were like just completely useless to me the entire match, and I lost
Eh,
2 of my games because I was basically holding on to cards that I couldn't use.
oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, everyone's brand new. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean it's a fun game. I can't find it. But there are some cards. Here we go. So there's a card. One of the cards is called G Fighter. It's kind of like it's like a space jet. Um, but on deploy, it has an effect that says choose one of your white base team units, and then it gains something called High Maneuver, which means it can't be blocked. So there are synergies based on factions,
Okay,
but there are also synergies based on how many cards you have in your like discard. For instance, there's some cards that have like this card will cost 2 less resources if you have 4 command cards in your discard,
hmm.
which felt a bit odd because when we were making our decks, they had like the store had a graphic and they said you should have this many cards of this type in your deck and this and this, and you only have like 6 to 8, I think, or 6 to 10 command cards in your deck, which meant that having a card that was reliant on you playing a ton of command cards wasn't really a viable sort of strategy, especially against a lot of aggro decks.
Sure, 6 to 10 command cards in a deck of 50 is not great odds.
Yeah, not great odds. Um, but luckily, there were some cards that were, you know, dual roles. So I had some cards that were both command and pilot cards,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
which I also liked because I was
yeah,
like, oh, I could use the. So, for instance, Hawk of Endymion is a
yeah.
card.
That's the one that they should send the tutorial.
Yeah, it's in the tutorial. So it's got 2 things. It's got main slash action, which means uh, it can be played during your main phase, or it could be played in response to something that your opponent does. And it lets you choose one enemy unit with 3 or less HP and return it to its owner's hand, which could be really powerful if your opponent has a weak unit that's attacking you, or if they have a strong unit that's taken some damage and it's got a pilot, because you could send that and the pilot back to their hand.
Mm-hmm.
So you could use it as a command card, or you could play it, get the main effect, and use it to pilot a unit, which is really cool. So you can kind of save it to like bounce something, or you could bounce something during your turn and then attack.
Yeah,
Really, really like the dual cards, and I found myself thinking like, okay, I need to pick command cards that have like a dual function, because like I had one game where my opponent he ended up drawing like 4 base cards and he had like no mechs, and I also had a level advantage on him, so I just wrecked this guy. And he ended up like I don't think he didn't take out any of my systems because he just had terrible luck and he had a ton of cards that he couldn't really use,
sure.
and it ended up being just like too late. Or like he was like, well, if I play a base now, you're just going to destroy it with the card that I like a powerful unit that I already have. But all in all, I think this is a very cool game. I suspect that they'll probably add additional colors. They did that with One Piece apparently, where they added in like a fifth color, like purple,
Hmm.
down the line, as like the product line grew. I hope they do that with this game. But I will definitely be playing it, and like I said before recording, I'm going to build you a deck, so
Nice.
that when you come here
Hell yeah.
in March, we'll play.
Yeah, because I'm brand new to Gundam as a franchise. Like I'm like a lot of Japanese mecha, franchises are just I don't know anything about them. Like I've just been getting into like 30-minute missions, like Bandai's sort of setting agnostic mechs. So like for those who have video, have all my little man toys here
Hell
with me that
yeah.
I've been building. Hell yeah. That's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm brand new to it. So like I would love to like get into Gundam, but on a local level, I don't know how much it's gonna go. Like how that's not a sentence. I don't know how much
It'll catch
local
on.
support it's gonna get. It might. Really, all I care about is I just need a couple friends to play with, and then boom, I'm in. On a local level.
Yeah, I've heard. I'm not super into Bandai card games, but in looking online, a lot of folks are concerned that Bandai will drop the ball with this game,
Sure,
where they'll generate a lot of hype and FOMO. They'll release very little product, and then stores just aren't gonna run events because they can't. Um, I wonder if it's gonna be like Lorcana, because when Lorcana came out, it was impossible to get product, and I know
sure.
that product scarcity kind of turned me off of playing that game. And then I just haven't gone and played Lorcana since a couple of the games that I played when it came out. Now product is far easier to get, and the prices have kind of leveled out, but uh, there isn't much of a scene.
Yeah, and I'm just not. I admire those who do, but I am just not really a like grab my decks and go to the LGS and play with people I don't know person. That's just not me,
That's
you
fair.
know. So like I said, I'll need a couple local friends to get into it before I really consider buying in. And I know me, I'm not really a deck builder person. I'm a pre-con boy. Absolutely, just get me my Wolf of Friendship Digimon deck and go with it. Or someone builds me a deck. Like I know that Marcus is he's got like upgrades for my deck to give me. That he's curated
Yes, he
to
showed
make
me a
my
list.
deck
So
even
for the
better.
audience, our friend Marcus is the one who got Drew interested in Digimon, and is the one who was able to find this beta event for me to attend. Because at the time of this recording, I fly out to Japan in 4 days. Um, so this was literally the only beta event that I could get to. Hence why I drove 2 hours one way to get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And I'm not a long distance driver. I'm a real baby when it comes to that.
Oh, see, it's easy peasy for me.
Oh, I'm like white knuckling it on the way back home because it was snowing and visibility was bad, and
Oh, well, that's bad.
I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
I'm
not
gonna
good.
fucking die.
Yeah,
On
that's
the
not good.
way over there, I was just like listening to like my Gundam anime theme songs just to get me ready.
Nice.
But yeah, the success of the game. If it was just based on the mechanics, I think this game will be a hit. I love the mechanics. I think there's a lot of strategic depth. I think the deck building is very interesting. The cards are beautiful. When I think of like anime card games, you look at like Union Arena or Weiss Schwartz, and
Okay.
it just looks like they use screenshots from the anime on the cards, and it just
Oh,
kind of
Digimon does that for sure.
yeah. But Digimon's also got some like nice custom stuff too. Um,
Yeah, they do. But for
but
some
like
of it is for sure just
screen
screen
grabs.
caps of the of the TV shows.
And I feel like that cheapens the experience for me. It cheapens the play experience. I want to look at my battlefield, my playmat, and I want to be like, oh man, this looks cool. And the Gundam card game, most of the cards are all custom art,
Yeah.
which to me shows that Bandai is like heavily investing in it. But again, art and mechanics aside, This game will not take off if stores can't, put stock on shelves, if people can't get it for a reasonable price, and if there's no organized play, because there is no indicator of how Bandai will support organized play. Um, you think of, I mean, my favorite TCG, Flesh and Blood, organized play is the thing that kept me in it because
Yeah,
I know that I can go every single week, play, get my ass kicked, but still come out of it with like a promo or something.
sure.
And now Flesh and Blood is doing this thing where they have promo booster packs. So like you could go to like a weekly store event and you get a booster pack. But they're like a special booster pack. They're not of a particular set. They're of a pack where you could get like really, really high value reprints for your decks. So
That's
it kind of
cool.
incentivizes you to come out and then of course support the store. But I don't know what the organized play will be like for Gundam. I hope there is some, and I hope that there's a scene. I mean, in a city like Toronto, there's got to be.
Yeah, yeah. I think you find this with a lot of TCGs where it's like, okay, they know how to make a good game, but do they know how to maintain a good game? You know, and that's always been a prevalent issue in TCGs.
Yeah, what will the competitive scene be like? Will they have cons? Will they do local events or support local events? I have no idea. I certainly hope so. On top of this game, we also have another game coming out in July, and that's Gundam Assemble. We
Hell
know
yeah, dude.
we know nothing about it, but in a future episode of Asians Represent, we'll be doing some speculation over Gundam Assemble. But this will all be based on how much information gets released within the coming months. But for now, what I could say about the Gundam card game is that I enjoyed it. I had a great time at the beta event. I know that these were really hard to get into, so I feel bad that many people can't experience this game. But I can definitely say that I am excited to play more of it. I'm looking forward to the final release in July, and that I have my fingers crossed that Bandai will support this game because I think it has some staying power. It's got a really, really cool and popular IP behind it, and there are a lot of cards that, or a lot of mobile suits and characters that I really want to see in card format. Um, so yeah, that said, Drew and I just want to thank you for joining us for this quick episode of No Dice No Problem, where we reviewed the Gundam card game beta.
Hell yeah, dude.